Barbra Mastromarino loved being a doctor's wife, and for a while she had it all.
Life to everyone who saw us was picture perfect.
Barbra and Michael were like the Barbie and Ken.
But when the good doctor's buried secrets suddenly surfaced,
It was shockingly callous in its disregard for the sanctity of human remains.
There was blood and entrails all over the place.
the gruesome truth shattered Barbra's life and shocked the world.
I couldn't stop shaking. It's almost like he had no soul.
When it comes to love and marriage, things aren't always as they seem. In January of 1989, Barbra Mastromarino was just another hard-working Brooklyn girl following a dream.
I was working in a tanning salon as a second job, working as a dental assistant full-time.
Barbra was always the popular one, the go-getter, the smart one of the family.
The only thing that Barbra was missing was a boyfriend, until one day when a handsome dental student named Michael strolled into the tanning salon.
He was just a strong, silent, gorgeous guy, big. I was like a giddy schoolgirl, is what I was.
Michael was definitely athletic, intelligent, had a slight bit of arrogance to him. You know, he knew who he was.
A few weeks after they met, Barbra had a first date with Michael. And from then on, she was smitten.
Michael actually, as we began to date, told his friends that I belonged with him. I was just over the top, you know, just like I found my Mr. Wonderful.
3 years after they met, Barbra married her Mr. Wonderful in a Catholic church in Brooklyn.
It was a beautiful, classy affair, a Sunday afternoon, close family. It was the people that mattered to us.
Barbra's dream wedding went off without a hitch, save for one slight snag.
When I went to go light the candle in church, it didn't light. I didn't really think much of it. I kind of laughed it off. But the day itself, besides that one little glitch, was absolutely a dream.
A few months later, Barbra put her own career ambitions aside to focus on Michael's.
He was aspiring to be a craniofacial surgeon, and I wanted to be able to take care of him. He worked so hard.
4 years later, Michael had reached his dream. And as his oral surgery practice grew, so did the couple's bank account. By the time their 2 sons came along, Barbra and Michael seemed to have it all.
For them, it was a storybook romance of football star becomes doctor. He meets my beautiful sister and has beautiful children, beautiful houses, anything they wanted.
But life for the couple wasn't always smooth sailing. By the fall of 2005, Barbra and Michael had been married 13 years. And like any marriage that lasts, they'd weathered some serious storms. But one day, Barbra got a phone call that was more like a hurricane.
Michael had called me from his office, whispering and kind of very tense. He said, "Barb, the authorities are here and they're searching my office. They're confiscating my equipment." And I was like, "Well, why?"
What body?
I watched the news on that particular day. I see Michael Mastromarino, ghoulish, crime.
Comment on the case? Not right now.
And I said, what the heck is going on here?
Michael was being accused of one of the most bizarre and gruesome crimes of the decade.
My mom got the call that Michael is going to be arrested and he's going to have to answer for what he did.
They're saying all these things about him, and I didn't know what to believe.
Five years before the phone call that would change everything, Barbra Mastromarino was married to the man of her dreams, a successful oral surgeon named Michael.
Life to everyone who saw us was picture perfect. Everything about us exuded envy.
But behind the flawless facade, things were beginning to fall apart. The young couple's troubles started in early 2000.
The first time I noticed anything in his behavior change was really being more irritable. He was always easily set off. His temper was a bit frightening.
While his anger was a problem at home, longtime friends noticed a change in Michael's appearance.
One particular evening, he just seemed disheveled. He seemed like something wasn't right. He wasn't himself.
When Barbara brought up her concerns, her husband had an easy answer.
He had a back injury from football. He's like, you know, I took some medication. I took some of the Demerol from my office for my back, and I must have just taken a little too much.
But Michael's colleagues at work had noticed something too, and one day they had no choice but to tell Barbara about it.
One of the associates called me up. He's like, Barb, do you notice any kind of different behavior in Michael lately? I said, no. I said, he just seems a little bit more on edge. Maybe he's just spreading himself too thin.
But it was much more than that.
He said, well, we did find him today in the bathroom with a needle sticking out of his arm. And I said, well, is he okay? Is anybody else okay? Are the patients okay? I didn't even know where to start.
He was practicing medicine under the influence. And to me, I was like, well, what would make him do something like that?
It was clear to Barbara. Her handsome husband was a drug addict.
And I was upset and I was angry. How do you treat a patient and then go in the bathroom and shoot up? And I knew that this problem was so much bigger than I really hoped it would be.
But the damage to his reputation had already been done. Soon after, Michael surrendered his dental license and was left with one choice: rehab.
He ended up going to a place down in West Palm Beach.
But Michael checked out of rehab after only 3 days. And within 2 weeks, he appeared to relapse.
At that 2-week point, he couldn't fight it anymore. He was coming home disheveled again.
Barbara suspected Michael was using drugs once again. And then one night, he didn't come home at all.
For my son's birthday, we had a birthday dinner that he didn't show up for.
As the hours ticked away with no sign of Michael, Barbara decided to take matters into her own hands.
Something went off in me. It was midnight, and I said, he's not coming home. I need to go find him. I need to know if he's drugged up. I need to know if he's alive or dead.
Barbara jumped in her car and drove around the neighborhood, frantically searching for her husband. Finally, she found him.
I come upon just a whole slew of flashing lights, and I drive up to it. And I see Michael standing there. He had a policeman on each side of him, and he looked very disheveled.
Michael had been in an accident, and Barbara was relieved that he was alive. But there was one more surprise in store.
There was another woman there, and he was with her. At that very moment was when I knew my worst nightmare had come true. Betrayal with drugs was one thing, but betrayal with another woman, that just shattered me to the core.
My perception with Michael was he definitely was a cheat, and I didn't like it.
Michael denied the affair, but he could no longer turn his back on the damage his reckless lifestyle was causing at home. He entered rehab once again.
Although I didn't want to look at him and talk to him, of course, I was there to bring him to rehab. I am his wife. That's what wives do.
This time, Michael stayed in rehab for 3 weeks. And when he emerged, he seemed like a changed man.
He was humble. He found humility. And through this whole rehab process, I learned a lot.
Barbara wanted to believe that the worst was finally behind them.
Not right now.
But little did she know that her troubles were far from over.
My eyes were glued, of course, to the television set.
After the news had hit, and he goes, Barb, I'm really thinking of running. Do you think I should run?
By the fall of 2000, Barbra Mastromarino had seen her husband through drug addiction, the loss of his dental license, and an alleged affair.
I was just destroyed and upset and just fearful as far as an affair and everything else. But I just was so proud of him that he beat the odds.
Still, without his dental license, Michael needed a new career.
So he tried to reinvent himself, and he came up with a career for tissue recovery. It was just the perfect fit.
In 2002, Michael launched a company called Biomedical Tissue Services, which sold body tissue for transplants, research, and bone grafts. With the family's consent, tissue harvesting is legal.
It seemed that he could practice medicine without practicing medicine because it's not a live person anymore. It was tissue harvesting.
Michael partnered with several funeral homes in the area, and in a matter of months, his new enterprise took off. Once again, he seemed to have the Midas touch and a head for business.
What Michael Mastromarino was doing was paying funeral home owners here in New York $1,000 per corpse. He then sold the parts to these 3 publicly traded companies that in turn sold the parts to hospitals, doctors, and what have you, for about $17,000, $18,000. So he had a huge markup.
Before long, Michael's company was harvesting an average of 20 bodies a month.
The money started coming in, and then we were able to move from our rental to another nice home.
While basking in their good fortune, Barbra kept a tight eye on her husband. As the years went on with no sign of Michael's demons, she finally let herself believe that life was back on track.
The business was growing, and he was expanding to different places, and he was able to spend more time with us as a family. All of it was like a dream come true.
But sometimes things that seem too good to be true really are. Nearly 5 years after Michael lost his license, Barbra got another devastating call. And this time, Michael would stand to lose even more.
Michael told me that his office was being searched. I asked him why, and he said, I don't know. He said they have a warrant, and they are confiscating everything from my erasers to my lab equipment.
When Barbra pressed her husband for answers, he claimed he had no idea what was going on.
He said, no, it goes, I didn't do anything. He said, I think it has to do with my partner.
But the charge was ugly: harvesting human remains without consent. The DA claimed Michael had been doing this for years.
Michael Mastromarino, according to the authorities, was stealing bodies and body parts. And he was doing this without the permission of the next of kin, which is illegal.
Sir, can you comment on the case? Not right now.
And it wasn't long before it made headline news.
It was shockingly callous in its disregard for the sanctity of human remains.
My eyes were glued, of course, to the television set. And I phoned her. And I said, what is going on? And she said, it's going to be okay. Michael was involved with some scandal, but it wasn't him.
Every step of the way, from the moment he was searched in his office, I believed in him. I believed in him and I believed him.
But a few months into the investigation, Michael's cool facade started to crack.
After the news had hit, he asked me to come up to the bathroom with him, and he ran the water in the shower to try to drown out sound because he thought we were being bugged at every moment. Yeah, and he goes, Barb, I'm really thinking of running. Do you think I should run? I asked him if he was innocent. He told me yes. I said, if you run, you are a guilty man right away. And he told me, if you tell me to stay, I'll stay.
Michael stayed, and over the next few months, Barbra remained at her husband's side, while others had their doubts.
There were friends, definitely in the group, that said, is she crazy? Is she stupid?
But soon, Barbra's world would come crashing down as the gruesome truth about Michael's crimes is revealed.
There were people whose bodies he harvested who died of cancer, who had AIDS. It's abhorrent.
I was mortified. It was disgusting.
After 13 tumultuous years of marriage, Barbra Mastromarino's husband Michael stood accused of one of the most grisly crimes imaginable, body snatching.
The news was stating that he was the ghoulish mastermind behind this heinous crime. And I didn't know if it's something to even believe.
As the investigation ensued, authorities were claiming that Michael was stealing dead bodies without written consent, chopping them up, and selling the bone and tissue for top dollar.
It is simply astonishing to conceive that there were people out there stealing dead bodies.
Michael's downfall began when the funeral home was sold where much of the harvesting took place. The new owners became suspicious and called the police. What they found was something straight out of a horror film.
It was an absolute disgusting hellhole. There was blood and entrails all over the place. They had a special elevator, and the corpses would be lifted straight up to this second floor room, and in this room, they did the cutting.
And what they did in the cutting room was just plain nasty.
One of the most remarkable aspects of Michael Mastromarino's operation was that when he excavated the bone from people's bodies, what he would do then was replace that bone with plumber's flexible PVC pipe. They could dress the body so that if there was an open casket, nobody would know that the bones were missing.
By the fall of 2005, the Brooklyn DA was involved, and the case blew wide open. What Michael was doing was unimaginable. And it didn't stop there.
He was also forging papers which said the cause of death. And in the United States, you cannot use body parts of people who have died of cancer or venereal disease or AIDS.
During his 4 years in the tissue recovery business, Michael and his team dissected more than 1,000 bodies, and not all of them were healthy.
The gruesome part to me was that, according to them, they were taking tissue from unviable donors. If somebody was 85, is suddenly on paper 65. Or if somebody died of a cancer, they actually died of a heart attack.
I couldn't believe what was going on. It was something out of a 17th century novel.
In February of 2006, Michael Mastromarino was arrested. 4 days later, he was out on bail, still insisting that he had done nothing wrong.
We were still being led along that it wasn't him, it was the funeral directors. It was other people that forged documents, and he was just the guy that came in and said, oh, documents are good. I could take the tissue.
The investigation into Michael's involvement lasted almost 2 years. While Michael fought the charges and maintained his innocence, Barbra continued to stand by him.
She definitely believed he was innocent. We all did.
Then, in March of 2008, Michael finally came clean. He pleaded guilty to multiple charges, including body stealing, reckless endangerment, and enterprise corruption. Barbra had no choice but to face the cold, hard truth about her husband.
He told me, Barb, I'm guilty of it all. And I was in a state of fury. That's it. I was done.
And done she was. Immediately after Michael was convicted, Barbra Mastromarino filed for divorce.
I don't understand how a person like that can turn. So, to me, it's all been a big fat lie.
When her divorce became final, Barbra got the chance to ask Michael the one question on everyone's mind.
When I asked him, why, Michael, why did you do it? He said, greed. He goes, plain and simple, Barb, it was greed. And that's all. This doesn't seem good enough.
Barbra Mastromarino will never forget the trail of heartache left behind by her once Prince Charming.
The trickle effect was so just unbelievable. The victims, they are truly victims. As far as what they've been through, they will live with that for the rest of their lives. And I wouldn't even begin to know how to apologize for something like that.
And today, Barbara's life is very different than the one she had with Michael.
My sister Barbara, she started fresh. And she's mainly focused on bettering herself. And she's writing a book. She wants people to know what they can do to empower themselves. So I like the message that she's creating.
It's a shame that I had to learn how strong I was from the experiences that I had to go through with him. And I think that hopefully looking at stories like this would help other people to really look at themselves and say, you know what, no matter what it is, I'm gonna get through it and I'm gonna be okay.